Hello and welcome back to the Future Proof podcast. This is a place where I like to get together with fellow business owners and entrepreneurs and talk about where we've been, where we are now, and where we're trying to go. And with me today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Gary Spolar from Century Chimney. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Good morning, Brian. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. You know, um, it's interesting when I look at your LinkedIn profile. One of the things I've been in BNI where we know each other from and in networking circles for a long time. And so much so that you have certain like beats that you hit in a lot of conversations. And one of those for me is this notion that like nobody's story is ever a straight line. That's something that I say to people all the time is going, yeah, it's sort of fascinating the people you meet where their tail zigs and zags. And I'm not assuming you don't have, ups and downs and stories to tell, but Century Chimney has been a through line for you for quite some time. Tell me about when did you get started with that and why chimneys, Gary? Why chimneys?
So it's been said, at least with other people in our industry, that nobody wakes up one morning and says, "I want to be a chimney sweep." It's something that finds us. We don't go to find it. So I was in college at Cleveland State. I was studying computer science, and the program was just in its infancy at Cleveland State. I knew more than my some of my professors did, probably most of them, just from my limited knowledge. And I realized that because the program was in its infancy, they did not have computer science instructors. They were instructors from math or science classes that were given a book and taught how to teach it. So during that time, I also realized that programming computers might just suck the soul out of me, and I wanted to be out and about and talking to people and being creative, and that's the part of computers that I enjoyed, not the programming. So while I was in college, I needed a job, and I found an ad in the Plain Dealer when the newspaper was still a thing, and it said chimney sweep wanted, no experience necessary. I thought, all of my friends are waiters or working in retail. This is different. I'm going to give this a try. And climbing up on roofs was, I compare the experience to being on a roller coaster for many years. Well, for a few years. After a while, it was like walking on a sidewalk. In fact, I had better coordination when I was walking on the peak of a roof than when I was walking down on the ground. So, after a while, I was getting compliments for two things. This is the joke, but it's also true. I was getting compliments for showing up at all. This is when I was working for the other company and showing up sober. And I thought, well, if the bar is set this low in this industry, I could do this. I could make a run at this. And I remember the first year I was in business, I was passing flyers out door to door. Um, I made a very small amount of money that all went back into the business. Same thing next year. By the third year, I was in the yellow pages, and when that was the place where most of us got our business, and uh, I had a much larger gross sales, but I kept maybe 1/5 of that. The rest of it went into the business, and then there was a tax bill at the end because we weren't collecting quarterly. That was my rude awakening to how businesses are run, how much it costs to start them. And so that was my entrance into it. I've done this work. I did this work for 2 decades on my own, myself, a cell phone, paper roadmaps until the GPS came out. And I knew at some point I had to make that change. So that's where I was.
Well, yeah, no, I love that, and you touched on right at the end one thing that was on my mind, which was clarifying during that time process, where and when, if at all, you had brought on additional help versus wearing all the hats. And it sounds like for 2 decades that you were wearing all the hats. And I'm curious specifically in terms of like the tracking and measurement part, right? That's to me one of those foundational pieces. when did that come into the mix for you? Were you somehow disciplined enough even to just be like writing things down in a notebook? You know what I'm saying? It's like, this was still what, in the early 90s at this point?
Right. I started in the early 90s on my own. I've been doing the work since I think 1988, and even on the side in 1988, and then moving up to where I had my own business and incorporated in the mid 90s. And so tracking things, there was no time for that. I just had to be a good human, show up for my customers. I got quite a reputation for being the guy. I was the chimney guy. I was everybody's best friend in the fall. People would call me up like they knew me from childhood, and they'd want me out yesterday to clean their chimney. So it was a lot. It was a good problem to have, being the most popular chimney company, chimney guy in the area. But at some point, I knew that I had to grow. And that was difficult for me because there's a way to do things, and I'm doing them the way that I do them. I want people to do the things the way I do them. And so I would basically show people how to do things 10,000 times. I basically had an assistant in my truck for 20 years, and he was my assistant and never moved beyond that. I didn't, I was a micromanager, and I had to let go of that. And I had to, at some point, realize that other people can have the same results or even better results by doing things in a different way. They're still going to treat my customers great if I hire the right people, and they're still going to get the job done as well as I would do it. And they're just going to do it in a different way. They're going to have a different personality. They're going to use different words when they're giving a customer their inspection. And that was difficult to let go of for a very, very long time.
And I don't want to leapfrog too dramatically, but so you mentioned that maybe the first hire is an assistant in the truck riding around with you, because again that's one of the things that I often wonder about too is, do you hire another in the field, technician, somebody doing the work that the business performs, or hire somebody to help organize the work behind the scenes with scheduling and taking, initial calls and some of that customer intake side. And I know that's a bit of a back and forth. So it sounds like you went with a technician, but also had a period of time where you were maybe struggling to loosen your grip in a way. Fast forwarding to today, how large is the operation? You've got a number of technicians, probably some admin staff as well. What's the structure like in 2026?
Sure. So in 2026, we have the wonderful Theresa, our office administrator, office manager. She is fantastic. She came to us looking for a job sweeping chimneys, being a chimney technician. And she was a technician. She was certified by the Chimney Safety Institute of America. But I let her know during the interview, where at some point after we were talking, I said, okay, you're hired. If you want this position, there aren't many women that come in looking for a job being a chimney technician. I said, we're at a turning point right now where we have an older gentleman that's probably going to be retiring soon, and he works from his home. I would like to have somebody in the office here for a number of reasons. And I'm wondering right now if you would like to take that position within 6 months. It sounds like you have some experience working with men. She had worked at restaurants and some other places where you're where you're dealing with all men, and there's some language that's a little different than when it's a combination of men and women in the workforce. And she was just a really, really good fit. Everybody has a lot of respect for her. She knows our product well. She knows everything that we do because she's actually done it. So she's not just answering the phone. She's a certified chimney technician. So she is wonderful. I do have an operations manager. His name is Patrick, and I've made the joke that he runs around with his hair on fire so I don't have to. I am able now to work on the creative things for our social media, our advertising, getting benefits for the good humans that work for me, which include retirement with a company match and healthcare, and focus on the business or be working on the business rather than in the business. So hell, I treat there's a saying that the customer is number one or the customer is always right. Well, the my employees are number one. I take good care of my people. I listen to them and I try to make their lives better, and then that gets paid forward to my customers. My employees are happy, well taken care of, and so then my customers are well taken care of.
Love that. And one thing I know from our conversations, right? You've explained that you literally one door hanger, at a time, sort of literally built this from the ground up, built this operation. It is yours. And what are some of the things that you see in terms of how you fit into the landscape of chimney companies? How do you separate yourself from the competition? And bluntly, what are some things that frustrate you that you see from other players in the space?
Sure. Give me the first one again.
Um, well, I guess what I was thinking of, Gary, just to not be vague, is where you've touched on how there's a lot of imposters in the field. So number one is that I was just sort of championing the fact that you're not a franchise operation. It's something that you've built from the ground up on your own. Yes.
Yes. Yes. And when you were talking, the last thing that I heard, which is what I focused on, is my frustrations.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right.
you
Right.
have heard me talk before. And one of my frustrations lately is that there are lead generation companies. Century Chimney out there right now. Century Chimney is not a lead generation company. It's a local company. I've been here for, I think, 35 plus years, and we have an actual address in Cleveland, Ohio. There are lead generation companies that have websites that show that they are in different cities and they are actually gaming the system. On their Google profile, they list certain addresses. I went to one of these companies recently, three of their different addresses. One is in the at 159 Crocker Park Boulevard in Westlake, and they're not there. There, it's an office building. Morgan Stanley and Regis offices, virtual offices are there, and a couple other businesses. The second of the three addresses was an empty lot in Cleveland, Ohio. There's no house there. There was at some point, but it was torn down. And then another one was another empty office building. So they are gaming the system somehow. They're throwing enough money at Google and probably companies that know how to game the Google system, and they are showing up with brand new websites, which are not actual chimney companies but lead generation companies. They are showing up with addresses on maps that they don't have, which games the system so that they show up better in search.
Mm.
Now, eventually, we get to these jobs and we fix all of the problems that they've messed up on at somebody's house, but it does slow our business down. It slows our phone calls down, our initial phone calls. So it's had an effect on all of the local companies in the area that are actually here, have real addresses, have real people that are actually certified. So there's a lot of false information out there about some companies in the area that aren't even here.
Well, and you sort of, it's not the only time I've heard of this, but it sounds like your industry is impacted by some of those bad actors from the standpoint of putting an initial, like, impossibly low price point in front of people in order to literally get into their homes. And then it's like, in order to actually get anything meaningful done, it's, the price just shoots up from there. And you know what I mean? It just sounds like there's some sketchy players in that industry, which is, it's important to recognize when somebody's approaching it the right way. And so I think that it's important to distinguish yourself from that landscape. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my friends that I know from entrepreneurs organization suggested that maybe I do something similar and give different levels of inspections. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm going to beat them, but I'm not going to join them. And so we've got probably 16 or 17 different players that are trying to appear as local companies in the area. And they are, again, they're just giving false information. It's frustrating, but I have learned how to turn them into Google address redressal, and I've done that. And some of the companies have gone away. They're no longer on Google Maps. Google said, "Oh, you're right. These companies don't exist here. They don't have addresses here," and they dropped off the map. So it's not something that I enjoy doing necessarily, but I'm helping not only myself but other companies in the area. And I know some of the other chimney sweeps in the area, and they're good people. We may differ in our opinions on how something should be fixed, but we both take good care of our people and our customers, and I wish them the best. Sometimes we trade work back and forth. If we're so busy we can't get to something, I will refer one of our potential customers to another sweep in the area that I know that can do good work.
Well, yeah,
So
no, I love
we're
that. You know that
we're all together.
the notion of approaching it with integrity in terms of how you execute as an individual, how you train your team, and the culture that you nurture, and that if you are going to form a sort of network like that with of your peers, that you're looking for people that match that, and what you're doing in terms of acting as a sort of watchdog in that online space. It does protect your business. It does protect the right competitors in those ways, but it's customer advocacy as well. It is a consumer protection measure ultimately as well, and that's a cool thing. And I liked what you mentioned as well, in terms of putting the focus that you have on taking wonderful care of the humans that serve Century Chimney, right? That you it's really important to you, and that's obvious to make your people feel like they matter inside the organization, and to put them in a spot where Century Chimney can help them feed their families and pay their bills and live this sort of life, work life balance, even that they want to. I want to pivot, Gary, and to sort of where you're headed with the organization, and to me that ties in, right, is how much do you want to grow and scale, and where are you headed? What are some goals that you have for the business moving forward?
So as far as the size of our company, that may stay the same. We still have a couple vehicles that are used sparingly. We could get two more technicians on the road. So we've always tried to grow slowly, and we have controlled growth, and we make sure that we get good humans in there. We hire people for character rather than skills. We found that if somebody else has experience in the chimney field, we're going to have to untrain them before we train them. We do things a different way than a lot of these guys do. We don't sell anything to people. When we do an inspection, we give people a report. We also give them a quote for the repairs if they need it. We don't Currently, we don't even follow up on those. We just let the people know we're not going to call you, you call us. If you have any questions, please let us know. Here's the information. Sometimes they'll start with, well, my last chimney sweep didn't see these problems. And our technicians will say, well, did they just shine a flashlight? Here's the actual pictures. We took them in your chimney. And then there's this defensive thing, because it's like, oh, I have to spend money for that. And they'll say, well, we're going to get other quotes. And we say, please do. Just make sure that they're actually CSIA certified, and that you're getting good people to do the work, and that they're going to do it right. And if you have any questions, please call us. So we're not low pressure, we're no pressure. Sometimes I think we should have a little bit of follow up with a CRM, that type of thing, but we don't do it. But it's worked really well for us. We come in, we're very honest with the customer. We tell them exactly what they need, and if there's a serious problem with their chimney and they can't afford to fix it, we just ask that they don't use it until they do. Even if they get their chimney problem safety issues fixed by somebody else, just make sure it's done. If they want us to come out and inspect the chimney after somebody else does the work, we'll do that. We just want if we treat people right and make sure that they're taken care of well, it comes back to us. It's like you're in BNI with me, Brian, so you know the saying givers gain, and it's karma, it's other things. If we treat people right, it comes back to us.
No, and Gary, I'll mention sometimes in these conversations that Babe Ruth story that I heard growing up that always stuck with me, where he talks about calling that he could call his shot, right? That he could point to a location and wait for the pitch and then hit it right there, right? And so from
Sure.
a, a goal setting perspective, I like the idea that we could revisit a conversation in a couple of years, and I want to know what shot you want to call, Gary, so that I can ask you about it later and be like, hey, you said you were going to accomplish that with Century Chimney. How did it go? So tell me about future Century Chimney, and where you're heading.
So you brought up that sports analogy with Babe Ruth. I often think of throwing darts, and we've thrown quite a few, and sometimes they don't even hit the board. That could have to do with marketing, where we want to hire, where we want to look for good people, and we've got better aim now. So we don't always hit the bullseye with every decision that we make as we try to grow. I think right now we're focusing on more efficiency. Just having all of our technicians and our office people and my operations manager being able to run more efficiently and do what we currently do even better than how we are doing it. We'd like to have our slow season be a little less slow and be a little bit shorter. So we're going to work on. We're probably will start following up with a proper CRM at some point soon. We're all digital, but the systems that we've built and the great inspection form that I've built actually for the company, they work really well and people are impressed with it. Nobody else in the industry has something like what we have, but there are ways that we could be more efficient. I guess that's the biggest thing. I don't think I am ever going to franchise. I don't know that I will scale. If I ever sell the business, and I'm sure at some point I will, it would be to somebody that can run it locally again. I care very much about my people and the legacy of the company, so it won't go to private equity where a large firm that is trying to cut every dollar, even if it means at the expense of quality, will take over. I don't want to do that. So I'm still throwing darts, Brian. I'm hoping I keep hitting more bullseyes. I don't, I'm focusing on doing what's right, and rather than setting a particular goal. I'm just taking care of my people, making sure our bills are paid, and that we do everything well at Century Chimney and in our customers' homes.
I love that answer, Gary. And
The good things
one thing
just
I'll
happen.
extract.
Uh,
One thing I'll extract from it is the internal process improvement piece, right? That even if it was something as specific as the CRM, but just broadly speaking, that was a takeaway that I heard, was that, you're it's not about some aggressive growth strategy in terms of doubling the number of customers or number of employees or anything as along those lines, but that you do see an opportunity with the great team and processes that you have in place to maybe just refine some things, you know what I mean? Sand off the edges kind of thing. And so, yeah, no, sounds like there's a great opportunity to maintain a great operation and to just look for some places to, I don't know,
Fine
add
tune.
some icing to the cake. Add some icing to the cake. So,
Right, right.
well, great. Well, Gary, I really appreciate you taking some time with me this morning. Where do people, where do you want to be found online?
We can be found online at centurychimney.com and on Facebook at Century Chimney Sweep and Repair. And we have an Instagram channel and other channels as well. But centurychimney.com is our main website. There is a contact form there, and customers can email us or they can call us Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. at 440 871 7707.
Love it. Well, Gary, thanks again for joining us this morning, and it was a pleasure to connect with you. And to anybody listening out there, I hope that it served as some interesting ideas of how to grow and how to be I don't know, the type of both employee advocate and customer advocate that we've seen today. So thank you again, Gary, for sharing your experience and wisdom with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for your time, Brian. I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too, sir. Thank you.